In terms of where to live, so we're currently in the South End and we love it there just because it's a 10-minute walk from Newbury and a 10-minute walk from the medical campus. So we're kind of, in between everything and there's a UPS there. So I think it's definitely important to kind of see what you're all looking for. And does it matter if you're near the public transportation? Do you want to be more walking distance?
When moving to Boston, I looked to live in either the South End or Back Bay neighborhoods as I wanted to live within a 30-minute walk to the medical campus. In addition, I had a family friend who told me these were safe areas with great access to grocery stores, restaurants, and other amenities. In the end, I found a place in Back Bay with great access to public transport, including the T and the free BU shuttle.
I currently live in Cambridge, which is right across the Charles River from Boston. And I really love this area because there's a lot of great food and it's sandwiched in between Harvard and MIT. So it's always renter's paradise. And there's a lot, the population is generally younger and there's a lot of students and grad students as well. There's a lot to do despite the pandemic. And I live pretty close to the Red Line in Central Square and also the One Bus, which takes me straight down Mass Ave to BU School of Medicine.
So East Boston actually, even though it's still considered Boston, the neighborhood itself is across the harbor from the main city. And it's a 10-minute walk to Logan Airport. And the beauty of living in the city or being so close to the airport where it is that it's actually perpendicular to the runways. And so fortunately, even though I'm close to the airport, I don't have to experience the loud airplane noises. And to get to the campus, I actually take the blue line into the city, the downtown crossing area, and then I take the silver line southbound to Boston Medical Center. And depending on the overlap of the T schedules, it takes me around 30 to 40 minutes. Because it's right on the harbor, you actually have, in my opinion, one of the best views in the entire city. So this is kind of the view from the Clipper Ship Wharf. And then there's also a greenway that goes from the waterfront and into the Constitution Beach, which actually has a view of the airport. So you can take a swim and also kind of see the airplanes enter and leave the Logan Airport. And East Boston's also known for its Latino community, and so there's a lot of Latino restaurants. And being Colombian, I really enjoy El Peñol, which is one of my favorite restaurants there. And there's also Down East Cider Brewery. And so if you ever are interested in trying some free cider samples, I recommend going to Down East because it's also by the waterfront as well.
Brookline has a lot of really great things about it. There are lots of restaurants and bars, if you sort of like to eat out and have nightlife. One other good thing about Brookline is that you can take the train really easily. So the Green Line train, several different lines of the Green Line run into Brookline. So it was really easy for me to commute to campus in the South End without having a car. I ended up moving out of Brookline because I got a car, and Brookline is really bad for street parking. You have to pay like a monthly fee to be able to park. You can't park at all times of the day on the street in Brookline. So I needed to move somewhere that was a little more flexible with parking. So I ended up moving this year to Brighton, Massachusetts, which is a neighborhood of Boston. It's inside the Boston city limits. Technically, it's still on the west side of the city. I like Brighton a lot. It's more affordable to live in than Brookline was. It's a little less fancy. It's more like suburbs kind of. And Brighton has free street parking on a lot of its streets that doesn't have a time limit as long as you're a resident. So I'm able to park my car on the street and not worry about it, especially in the winter and things like that.
So I live in Waltham, which is a suburb about 10 miles west of Boston. And I chose to live out here because my partner goes to Brandeis, and it made sense for us to live close to one of our schools, and it's cheaper to live out here than it would be in the city. We have more space and things like a parking spot that we wouldn't necessarily get within our budget in Boston.
So this is where I live on the corner of Commonwealth Ave, which is where the Green Bee line runs, and Harvard Ave, which is also another pretty main street. So I just highlighted some of the amenities that are in my neighborhoods. We have Stop and Shop, which is a grocery store, hardware store, Star Market, which is the grocery store that I go to, is very close. And it's also I hop off of the BU shuttle right here, and then on my way home, usually stop at the grocery store if I need anything. There's also the Avenue Bar, which is my favorite neighborhood bar to go to. There's a CVS, a Boston Sports Club gym, Harry's Bar, another hardware store, post office in Coolidge Corner, Trader Joe's within walking distance. This is about a mile walk, so not too bad.
We kind of really lucked out because we found this perfect place that was only like 15 minutes away. It was in the neighborhood of Roxbury that we've never been to. So one of us came up and we kind of checked out the neighborhood and we saw that it was a good place.
And for me, I was just looking for a place that allowed me to have a dog, indoor laundry, and something that was really kind of close to campus and cheap at the same time. And Roxbury was a pretty good choice overall.
I started by finding a roommate. I used the BU off-campus roommate finder to talk with others. In the end, I connected with a graduate student from another local college, so I recommend being open to who you're willing to live with. I mostly used online websites to look for apartments, such as apartments.com and Zillow, but some of my friends had success using Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace to find places. Something that was new to me is that in Boston, most companies charge a broker fee, and this is paid up front in addition to the first and last month's rent. But unlike a security deposit, you don't get this money back. However, there are apartments without this fee, so it's something to look into and ask about, and remember to negotiate.
So we found it through Zillow. We had put in that we were interested in another place, and that connected us with a broker, and he ended up showing us this. So the broker that I mentioned is sort of an unfortunate reality usually of renting in Boston, and that's not something that people tend to realize when coming from elsewhere. So usually you pay a broker fee equivalent to 1 month's rent, and so that's definitely something to bear in mind as you are looking.
When I was looking for apartments, I used websites like Zillow, Craigslist, and apartments.com. And my current situation now is that I have a roommate. We live in a 2-bedroom for $2,400 a month. So out of my own wallet, I pay $1,200, which is on the higher end to what my most students would pay, but I'm able to make it work financially. And for utilities, I just pay electric and no gas.
I was enlightened about something called MetroList, which is income restricted lottery housing systems for all the new constructions. It's under the Boston Housing Association. It's a totally legit thing. If you go to boston.gov/MetroList, they have a list of all of the lotteries and income restricted units in all of the new constructions, which is required for all of the buildings in Boston. And you just put in your household size and your income, and it'll tell you what your percent AMI is, which means how much you're making, what percent of the average median income is that. And all of the units have a dedicated or an assigned percent AMI that they have to keep their rental price under, no matter what the regular market listing price is. So because I found out about that, I applied to a bunch of lotteries last year and was lucky enough to get into one. And I'm now downtown in a luxury building paying a third of the market price because of what our income is as graduate students.
For our program within BU, we basically had this huge group meet where we talked a little bit about ourselves and kind of things we were looking for in a roommate. So based on that, I had reached out to a girl that I thought was pretty similar to me. We had similar background in psychology, and she had 3 sisters, I had 3 sisters. So I knew, we'd have some common ground. So we ended up including a third roommate who also was really similar, and we kind of all had the same expectations for living standards. So, how clean were we? Did we value being next to a grocery store, a laundromat, a gym? So these were definitely really important things to kind of settle out in the beginning.
We would definitely recommend that you come up to Boston and spend a few days before committing to any places. I know during COVID, it was especially hard for us to be able to see places. Oftentimes we have to try to schedule something in advance. And even then it was usually an online walkthrough. And for us, that was particularly difficult to especially get a handle on what it looked like especially when it was on phone. It's kind of a hassle in of itself.
So I ended up searching on Facebook. There are a lot of really good Facebook groups for Boston housing. And that's where people will post open spaces that they have in their apartment. And it just is a lot easier to find places that way. And you don't have to go through like a realtor or a broker or anything like that. So if you go on Facebook and you just search like Boston housing or Boston apartments, a bunch of those different groups will come up that you can join. You can make your own post saying that you're looking for a place, or you can just respond to other people's posts.